Okay, 7th grade. This will be a language lesson looking at lesson 3 and lesson 4. We were supposed to have lesson 3 done for Monday and lesson 4 done for Tuesday. So let's just go over a few things on there. In lesson 3, this is page 11 in your language book, talking about things within direct quotations that also need to be in quotation marks. Okay, so you have your double quotation around your direct quote, and then if you have anything within there, if you have another quote within the direct quote, then you put a set of 1 quotation marks on either end of those. For example, number 7, you were supposed to do number 7. Number 7 should look like this. Mrs. Reed said, quotation mark, double quotation mark. Have the poem Ballad of the Tempest memorized by next Thursday, and double quotation mark after Thursday. Then within that, what do you have that needs to be in quotation marks? This can be either words that somebody's speaking within another direct quote, like number 8 would be an example of that. Paul told the Ephesian elders, then you have the words of Paul, remember the words of the Lord Jesus, how he said, then you have the words of Jesus, it is more blessed to give than receive. All right, so you need, it is more blessed to give than to receive, with a single quotation mark, but then a double one from remember to the end of the sentence there too. So in number 7, within the double quotation marks, you have the title of the poem, Ballad of the Tempest. Put a single quotation mark on either side of the poem there. Then number 9 is the same kind of thing. It is similar to this. You have a song within the direct quote. So you have the direct quote, the song leader said, quotation marks around. Think about the words of the song, I surrender all as we sing it. And then I surrender all needs the single quotation marks. If you are struggling to identify the parts of speech, make sure you check them out. You have your reference sheets with those. The 6th grade reference sheet has the part of speech, so check those out. 22 and 23 on page 12. When we're doing this, when we're checking this, this lesson is not going to be graded. This will not go on the report card, but you should be following after with a pencil or a pen and make corrections if you need to make any. Just so you know what you're doing, so you can go back and look. Make sure you know what you're doing. 22 and 23, you're supposed to label hearing as a participle or a gerund. Remember, gerunds and participles are verbals, verb forms that act as another part of speech. A participle is a verb form that acts as a what? Lexi. Oh, that's right, you're not here. I missed you guys, all right? A participle is a verb form that acts as an adjective. And a gerund is a verb form that acts as a noun. Anywhere that you can have a noun, you can have a gerund. Remember that gerunds always end with ing, but not every word that ends with ing is a gerund. An ing word could be a participle. But if it's a gerund, if it's a gerund, it has to have ing. 22. Granddaddy muttered, I can't get used to this hearing aid. What is hearing? In that case, hearing is describing what kind of aid. So it is a participle, an adjective, which means that 23, hearing the word without obeying it is dangerous. Hearing would be a gerund. You have that gerund phrase, hearing the word, and hearing would be the subject of the sentence. Hearing without obeying is dangerous. Number 27 has 2 gerund phrases. So here we have gerunds again. You're supposed to underline the gerund phrase. That's the gerund and any words that go with it. And circle the gerund and write how it is used in the sentence. So number 27, Jill's hobby, watching birds, is something she can do in spite of being in a wheelchair. You have the gerund watching. Watching birds should be underlined. Circle watching. And that is a what. Think about it. That is a what. That is in a positive. Hobby and watching are the same things. So watching birds, gerund phrase. Watching is the gerund. It is a positive. And then at the very end of the sentence, you have another gerund phrase. Being in a wheelchair. With being circled. And that would be of being, object of the preposition. Being would be an object of the preposition. Look at the diagram, number 29. You have your gerund phrase. Remember, when you diagram these, you have this gerund. In this case, it is the subject of the sentence, but because it is a verb form, it can also have what? It can have direct objects with it, right? It could also have a prepositional phrase with it. In this case, we have watching Indians as the direct object. Adjective, the Indians, adjective phrase, in Labrador. So watching the Indians in Labrador makes up the sentence, subject of the sentence. That entire thing is a gerund phrase, all right? The verb is inspired, and then what got inspired? Invention receives, invention was inspired, so that's the direct object, invention. The invention of frozen, did you catch that? Participle. Verb form used as an adjective. What kind of food? Frozen food, but this is a participle that has to be diagrammed on the curve like that. So that is that diagram. Check that out. If you did it like that, very good. If not, work at figuring those things out. Common things that you do now are any ing, you tend to make a gerund. So yeah, not every ing word is a gerund, but watch out for that. Watch out for the ing words. Watch out for the participles. We tend to forget about participles, and just diagram them as adjectives. Look at lesson 4, page 15. You were supposed to use the second sentence as the subordinating clause or the dependent clause. So the second sentence in these are supposed to be the added information. It's not the main idea of the sentence. This lesson, remember, has to do with the idea that you can choose which one to make the main idea of the sentence. Last time's video, we talked about Fanny Crosby. And what's the main part? Is the main part that she was blind, or is the main part that she wrote many hymns? And you can decide what the independent clause is there. So, but here, you are supposed to make the second sentence the dependent clause or the subordinating clause. So number 1, the idea for the slinky came from a loose spring. The slinky is one of America's favorite toys. So the slinky is one of America's favorite toys. You are supposed to make a dependent clause or the subordinating clause that needs to be introduced with a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun. In this case, actually you're supposed to use, in this case, yes, in parentheses, you're supposed to use the word which. So the best way to do this is that the idea for the slinky came from a loose spring. Sorry, I apologize. The idea for the slinky, which is one of America's favorite toys, came from a loose spring. Okay, you see that? You stick that in the middle there. The idea for the slinky, which is one of America's favorite toys, came from a loose spring. And which, I think I called that subordinating conjunction, which is a relative pronoun. All right? Number 3. You're supposed to use the relative pronoun who to make the second sentence the dependent clause and the subordinate clause. Cents off coupons were introduced by C.W. Post, who wanted to boost the sales of his new cereal, Grape Nuts. Okay? See how that's done there. Number 5, you can choose which one you want as the independent clause. What is the main idea? You choose what the main idea is. Is the main idea that Blaise Pascal was 19 years old? Or is the main idea that he devised the first calculator? And you decide. So it could be written like this. Now I'm confused by my own work. Blaise Pascal was 19 years old when he devised the first calculator. So there you have the main fact that he was 19 years old. Blaise Pascal was 19 years old when he devised the first calculator. Or you could make that first idea the dependent clause. When Blaise Pascal was 19 years old, he devised the first calculator. Then the last part about him devising the calculator is the main thing. So check out number 7. See how you did on that. See if that makes sense for that. All right. Let's go on to, I think that's all we're going to do actually. Make sure, look at number 11, page 15, number 11. What's the subject? Neither my cousin nor my aunt is or are fond of word games. Remember, if you have that correlative conjunction, neither nor, then you look at the subject closest. So the subject is cousin's aunt. Cousin's aunt is the subject. You look at the subject that is closest to the verb, and if that's singular, you use a singular verb. Neither my cousins nor my aunt is fond of word games. Excuse me. Tomorrow we will review for quiz number 1 that you will take on Thursday. Remember also that tomorrow reading lesson 11 is due. Okay? Please pay attention to that schedule I have. I have your work scheduled from now to the end of the year. Every day I have the lesson that's due that day in language, math, or reading. Okay? So pay attention to that. I am not always going to remember to mention, hey, by the way, lesson so-and-so is due in reading. You be responsible to pay attention to that schedule, please. All right. Thank you.